All right, so we're going to start with, we'll start with just kind of reviewing the 3 chapters: missions and ascension, missions and Pentecost, missions in the second coming. And which one do you think Cain was most impassioned about?
Was it the ascension?
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Which was really, yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. It was, I think, the longest, if I'm not mistaken, the longest of them, and kind of the most impassioned. Matter of fact, he made some statements that, you know, we minimize the ascension, and we're just, how can we do so? You know, and the Holy Spirit. I mean, because both of those kind of revolved around the work of the Spirit, and so had some, you know, number of really good comments in throughout those chapters. Any thoughts or any things that you read that you'd like to dialogue on, or just say, this was really good, I appreciated that. I've marked a few things of my own. Nobody?
I marked something in 232. That was interesting under the point number 1, it was a God-fearing church, and the second paragraph talking about there's 2 kinds of fear. And I thought that was very interesting and good. Different types of fear. The warm, rational form of fear is based on a recognition that while God is the thrice holy God, whose word is law, and whose law cannot be broken with impunity, he is also a loving Heavenly Father, whose loving kindness is better than life, and whose tender mercies over all his work.
This kind of fear engenders trust. Yeah. 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 Other good sections that you read. I'm trying to find the one that I marked a fairly large one. I just was really, but I think it was in the last chapter, missions in the second coming. It was. Yeah. I just really appreciated kind of his statements on 254. Long section, the fact that started almost the whole page at the beginning. Neither the mischief of men nor the machinations of the devil were to deter them. They were taught to believe that they were engaged in a holy war with an implacable foe who would not surrender without a life and death struggle. Casualties would occur and reverses come, but they were to press on in full confidence that the captain of their salvation would be with them to the end of the age. Many battles would be lost, but the war would be won. On that point, there was no doubt. We do well to bear this in mind when the modern prophets of doom are sounding the death knell of the Christian mission. The days are dark and doors are closing in various parts of the world. Some timid souls fear that we are about to witness the demise of worldwide missionary enterprise. When Mahatma Gandhi was carrying on his Quit India campaign against the British during World War II, it looked to many as if the missionary body would have to evacuate India along with the British Raj when independence came. When the situation in Zaire blew up in our faces in the 1960s, some Christians at home were ready to recall the missionaries from that troubled land. When Jomo the ex-leader of the Mau Mau Rebellion, became prime minister in Kenya in 1963, the missionaries feared the worst. They had their suitcases all packed, ready to leave at a moment's notice. But in all 3 countries, the dust settled and the missionaries are still there. After almost 60 years of oppression and persecution, the Soviet government has not been able to crush the church in the USSR. There are more evangelical Christians in Russia today than any time in their long history. Dictators come and go, kingdoms rise and fall, civilizations wax and wane. But the worldwide mission of the church will continue to the end of the age in spite of all the vicissitudes of world history. When one door closes, another will open. If Western missionaries become persona non grata, non-Western missionaries will be raised up to take their place. If all expatriate missionaries are expelled from a given country, there will be an indigenous church to carry it on. If the indigenous church is forced to go underground, there will still remain the Spirit of God who dwells not in temples made with hands, but in the hearts of his people. It is one thing to get rid of the visible church, it's quite another to get rid of the Almighty God. Heaven is his throne and earth is his footstool. It's impossible to banish him from any part of his domain. The Christian mission is here to stay until the end of the age, however long that may be. I just thought that was a great couple of paragraphs. So, anything else in Cain?
There was, I'm not sure if I can find it right now, but the section when he was talking about, this was shocking that Calvin was based, that deal with him, that he basically said,
Mission was, the Great Commission
God's
was...
going to do it.
And wasn't it in that context that he said the Great Commission was given to the apostles, and that's already been done. So at this point, men reject, everybody knows, and now they just have to, we don't need to take it anywhere, right? Is that the same?
Yeah, and that's, and then because just through the years, those that were Calvinistic, we saw were not evangelistic minded.
Yeah.
And I had never an explanation why, yes, other than, okay, God's going to do it, but not that it was ever overtly stated like that.
Yeah.
And that was very fascinating.
Yeah, and I think that probably goes two ways, because experientially speaking, having not conducted any survey, the most committed evangelists I know, the 3 or 4 most committed guys I know personally, are all Calvinists. All of them. And it's just like, matter of fact, one of the most evangelistically used in fruit-bearing ministries that was kind of used around the world came out of a Presbyterian church. Evangelism Explosion. Yeah, D. James Kennedy. And it was, and then you'd see other guys who were like, completely the opposite. So I don't know if it's the I don't think it's the theology that drives that. The Calvinism drives it one way or the other, but you can certainly understand why some guys are so hardened on God's election that we don't need to do anything about it. That is there. I don't know any Arminians ever kind of lose their evangelistic zeal. A lot of them. A lot of the evangelists were more Arminianistic. Wesley was Arminianistic, and he was quite fervent in his evangelism. Anybody know? Yeah, but that was I didn't realize that either about those some of those Reformation leaders.
Well, yeah, it was just quite the shock. Then understanding, and then you saw that whole. So that things were quiet. Then that around the 1700s and how things were breaking loose.
Yeah.
And the Moravians and
yeah.
So that was I really liked the way it pulled things together.
Yeah. He did. He kind of that it was helpful. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on?
Well, I had this one on 243, and it's in the middle of the.
That's where I'm at.
Page. Because my wife is Catholic, and it goes about this church historians, and it's just talking about, for the most part, church history is concerned with Christian doctrine and all this stuff, church feuds, all this other stuff, and it's not about the gospel. So I guess that what was striking me.
Yeah, you know, I that too was another one of those sections when I was reading it that was like, And you know, and I'm not a historian, but I have taught church history a couple times, you know, and you know, it's one of those things where you learn as you, and you know, you try to just stay a step ahead. And use Carnes, History of the Christian Church, great church history, a lot of things. But when I read that, I was like, he's right.
I thought the same
Did
thing.
you too?
I
Yeah.
was like,
You were at the same place?
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like,
It's like, it's.
I like church history. I read it. He's not wrong.
He's not wrong. Yeah, that's kind of where I was. And it was like, why is it all about these things that
Read about the missionary or
the where when
translation of scripture.
when did it? I mean, you get a little bit of that in church history during the Reformation and the Wycliffes and all of that, but even into English, the first translations of the Bible into English, Wycliffe was what, 1400s, and the first translations of parts of the Bible into English was in the 800s. Hundreds of years before Wycliffe, and you just, yeah. So I agree. I thought there's another one of those. Yeah, we don't. So he has a lot of really perceptive comments. His whole section, and I think it was the Pentecost one that he was so focused on the work of the Holy Spirit, and I thought that was a good emphasis. That and I thought wasn't it that section where he talked about you kind of have these three epochs. Yeah, the epoch of the Father, which was the Old Testament, the Son, the Gospels, and the epoch of the Spirit. And they're not competing, but there's a different kind of primary person of the Trinity functioning. And that was kind of okay. I mean, it's simplistic. It's not explanatory. It's not It's not absolutely the Father, the Spirit, or the Son, the Spirit. But there certainly is a tendency towards that. And so that was, I thought, another kind of helpful thing. Anything else? You didn't finish your reading. Sarah.
Even if you didn't ask, she'd confess.
I was going to say.
I didn't ask, but I was on 238.
Yeah. Did you? Yeah, good. I've got an article here that it's from 9 Marks. I don't know if you're familiar with 9 Marks. Pretty good organization, like everywhere. I wouldn't sign my name below everything that comes out of 9 Marks, but a lot of things. It's good. And here is an interesting article, kind of in conjunction with some of the stuff we've been talking about. And I think it kind of dovetails a little bit with what Cain was talking about, the resurgence of the missions emphasis, but it talks about it from a different, maybe a little bit different perspective. And have you seen this before, Dan? No. So I don't know that we're gonna spend any time on it now, but take it home and take a look at it. And basically it says, and I think he puts his finger on some recent trends that need to be addressed. Whether he has righted the pendulum or just moved it. I mean, he's got some really good points.
Some issues we're struggling with.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So something, and we'll just leave it with that. So let's spend most of our time today as we talk about missions, talk about the idea of culture, and in a sense, when you talk about missions, if you're going to use the term the way that we typically use it, the way we've been using it in this class, the way that we normally understand it, unless we redefine it, and I suppose you all kind of caught the fact that our keynote speaker twice mentioned the fact that everybody's a missionary, and I.
He wanted to have his cake and eat it too. Because he said everybody's a missionary, and then he did a call for people
to go to missions. So, he used it in the atypical way the first time, and in the typical way the second time, and no bones to pick with what the heart is in that attitude.
I mean, doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah. So, but when you use it in the typical sense, missions differs from evangelism in that, as we use the term, is that missions, crosses. You go somewhere. You cross out. You go out. You're sent out. You're going somewhere to do something, and therefore, almost inherently, it involves a crossing of some cultural, geographic, geopolitical boundaries. And so almost inherently, when you talk about missions, you have to talk about the issue of culture, the issue of ethne or ethnic groups, and you probably know that the word ethnic comes from the Greek word ethnos, which is translated in the Scripture. You didn't know? Okay, well, it is. It's from the Greek word ethnos, which is one of the common words in the Scripture when you translate nation or people. Sometimes it means just heathens. Gentiles is often ethnos is often translated Gentiles, Greeks even, and here it doesn't mean Greeks in the sense of the Greek nation. It means Gentiles, anybody who's not a Jew. So this concept of different ethnicities is out there. Not different races. Matter of fact, and I don't know what the scientific definition of a race is. One particular book I was looking at today said that ethnos are not different races. They claim there's only 3 races. I forget what 3. Caucasian, something else. I think the Negroid maybe, and kind of the Asian. I've always thought that there's only one race. And that's kind of the way I've always dealt with it. There are humans who are fundamentally the same, but different cultures. And so to look at these cultures, sometimes we call them people groups, all kinds of things. How far down do you divide people groups is probably difficult to say. For example, is there a difference between Kansans and Californians? Are we 2 different people groups, or are we all Americans? Now, maybe I shouldn't have used Californians because that was a bridge too far. We just have to classically say, yes, there is a difference between Kansans and Californians. But but you get the idea. So when we talk about culture, missionaries spend a lot of time on culture, and it's actually it's a good thing to do, because even here in America, one thing that being on the mission field does for you, and the further you cross cultural bounds, the more it does this, is it forces you to kind of look at your Christianity, your faith, the outworking of your faith, and wrestle with the questions, okay, how much of that is biblically driven and how much of it is culturally driven? Because, the culture does drive things. There is a Christian culture in America. There's also an evangelical culture in America. And so, those things are there. Culture is not inherently right. It's not inherently wrong. But that doesn't mean it's always neutral either. We understand that. Sometimes culture is okay. Sometimes culture is bad. Sometimes it's neutral. Sometimes it's good. So it falls all over the board. But it is profitable to be able to at least understand what cultures are, and then to determine what parts of it are healthy, which part of it are not. When you think about culture, what are the elements of culture? When we use the term culture, we're talking about what distinctions amongst people? What are some of their distinctions?
Speech, dress.
Dress, clear, speech, meaning just even language. Okay, what language they're using, okay, or dialect of a language, nuance. What else?
What to eat.
What they eat. Mm-hmm.
It's a funny one, but I was actually thinking music.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the way the cultures do music versus other cultures.
Yeah.
in worship.
Yeah, clearly music is different in different cultures, and the instruments that are used thereunto. Mm-hmm. What else?
Personality too. Like Hispanic people are different than Germans.
Yeah. And here when we talk about the issue of nature or nurture, it is clearly nurture. And sometimes people say, well, I'm hot-headed. I'm Irish, and yeah, a lot of Irish are hot-headed because it seems to be the culture or whatever. But yeah.
I feel like living situations could technically be one, because if you have a village,
Yeah.
they've obviously they don't live in a city.
Yeah.
So,
And completely foreign ways of the village, just where you get your water, how you eat, cleanliness, and hygiene is technology. Yeah, we had some real, Jenny more so than me, had some real hygiene shocks in Poland. All right, and I remember one time one of our kids said, because it was just dirty. I mean, part of it was communism, coal plants and pollution all over the place, and every time it rained, there would just be coal all over because it would come down in the rain, and so rains didn't do much good to cleaning. And one of our kids one time said, next time God sends rain, I hope He sends a bar of soap too. Yeah, they were just little itty bitty things, like 5, So it was. But and we were, one time I just think about hygiene, was recently we were in South America over at where Karina Clements is, and she took us out into some of the shack villages with her one day, and there was some family she was mentoring, and the kids, we were there, and so the kids wanted to make something. I mean, it was a one-room shack that was just dirty. Kids were dirty, grimy, and they were kneading some dough and pushing something out that they were going to cook up, and it was like, you know what? And it was, it was like, boy, you don't say, well, could you please wash your hands, or because hygiene is, and where was it? Not Cambodia, Thailand. When you eat, we would all be eating in Thailand, and in the middle of the thing would be a pot of rice, and it's not like we just scoop one and then we take a bite and take another bite, and we're all scooping out of the same dish. And is that wrong? It works well for the Thai, So yeah, lots of things make up culture. Looks, even somebody said dress, but even just kind of how we look, how we behave. It's learned. Culture is a learned system. Beliefs are often cultural. I mean, very much spiritual beliefs. Behavior patterns. One guy, when we were getting ready to go to Poland, this guy was an American, and he was in Vietnam, and he talked about something was going on, and one of the Vietnamese, this was Vietnam, I think actually before the war even. Yeah, I think it would have been before the war. At least before the Americans were involved in the war there. And a Vietnamese guy came with a gift to him and said, and he didn't hand him the gift, he held it out, and he said I've and he knew the guy, and the guy said, well, I don't know all the details, but I'll give you the gist of the story. The guy said, I've walked 5 miles from my village today to present this to you, and I was able to acquire it last week when I went over the mountain range to this distant tribe, and I sold the one goat that we had to get the money so I could acquire this gift for you, and now when I did all these things and all these, I've gone through all these troubles, and he just listed trouble after trouble after trouble, and here is this gift, and if we did something like that, what would we be thinking? Kind of a begrudging giver. He didn't quite understand it, but then he told about his own situation where he had gone to a great degree of trouble, difficulty of acquiring a gift for a Vietnamese guy, and went and gave it to him and said, oh, this is just a little something I picked up. and later, somehow, in the whole context of all this, it just dawned on him, how much he had blown it, that he had just basically, what our culture would be would be that, hey, found a little something for you at the store, here it is, and it may be something big, but we don't want to draw attention to ourselves and their culture that was completely different, and so lots of stuff like that dictates cultures.
Well, that's, I don't know if that's culturally driven. I have people who come in and get money and donate it to charity because it'll help on their taxes, and they want to make sure their name is all over the checks and the stubs, and it's pretty common.
But that's probably, in our culture, that would be read in a different way. We would read that as what? Our culture would read that as wanting to get glory for myself, like the person that made a big deal out of putting money in. And so that would be, in our culture. In the Vietnamese culture, and again, it was...
That was not I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was the difficulty and trouble and cost was part of the gift. That was the idea. It was part of the gift. Matter of fact, similar but different. I remember one time when we were in a big church in California when I was in the Marine Corps, and it was a good sized church, and the pastor of the wife. The wife of the pastor, when she would send out Christmas cards, and that was at the time when everybody was doing form letters, computers were out there, you could actually even, merge print your addresses onto your envelopes, and she didn't do that. She hand wrote all the addresses on the envelope, and she just said that was part of her gift. And so again, it's just some different things, but as a missionary, when you cross cultures, you have to, the fact that they are different. Has everybody been in a different country at one time or another?
Yeah.
Everybody? Okay. And so we all kind of know that. The fact that they are different is given, and we've got to in a sense interact with the culture in a way that is spiritually healthy. The two bad ways are everything that they do is not like I do it, therefore it's what? It's wrong. And that's some people that I haven't seen many missionaries do that. If a missionary does that, they just tend to not be there very long because everything is a battle. Actually, the other side is I've seen a little bit more often. This culture is cool, and everything they do is better than what we do. And sometimes this culture is, well, that's just the way it is. I knew missionaries. Nudity in Europe was horrific when we were there, on television, on commercials, on billboards, what you would call, for lack of a better term, soft nudity. It wasn't, it wasn't pornographic type of stuff, but it was just very prevalent there. Beaches and everything else, and pools, swimming pools, and I knew a number of missionaries and that had no problem going to the pools because, well, that was the culture, and it's like it is the culture. You are right, but that is not an acceptable part of the culture. Cultures can be neutral, but they can also be very, very sinful. And we tend not to see our own sin in our culture. This is a different issue, but just biggest blind spots, and I can't say the biggest. What are some big cultural sin blind spots that you might imagine in America?
Everything.
I think sports.
I'm talking about blind spots.
I think sports.
That can be a real. I think sports. That's not typical. That is not universally American. That cultural blind spot is pretty, at this point, pretty prevalent. Western Europe, even with soccer. But yeah. Mm-hmm. What else? The biggest one that believers, I often heard from believers overseas about America. One of the biggest ones was gluttony. That we just doesn't even register on our list. All you can eat buffets, and we roll ourselves in and we roll ourselves out, and it is interesting. Americans are extremely, and I never believed it when I went over to Poland. I went to Poland, and my sister said, "Well, wait till you go back, you're going to realize how overweight Americans aren't overweight." But after being in Poland and then going back, it's like, wow, a lot of Americans are really overweight. And
this is a story along those lines. Robert Mitzka.
Mixa.
When he was here on his sabbatical, I ran into at Price Chopper. I believe it was Price Chopper. Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Robert, how you doing?" He's like, "Fine." And he looked lost. I was like, "Can I help you find something?" He goes, "I just need a jar of pickles."
I can see him saying
pickles.
that. Yeah.
That was really funny.
And and the issue with, just to put caveats in there, there are you will have people who struggle with their weight in all countries because part of it is genetic. You notice it's a cultural issue when you have a high percentage
I was gonna say,
people.
when we were stationed in California, and then we came back to Kansas, it's like, oh my God, everybody is fat here.
In Kansas?
Yes, because California, it seemed like, everybody was athletic and watching their weight and stuff, and then we got back
Yeah.
here and it's
Colorado
like,
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Very athletic.
Yeah. So, so you're going to cross these boundaries, and you've got to, kind of deal with it, and think through it. Again, the dangers that it's all wrong, or that it's all right, and it is an exercise in understanding the scriptures, and in making sure, how to put it, Christianity, whether in America or anywhere else, is not void of culture, and culture doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it is necessary to recognize what are the differences between the cultural outworkings of Christianity and the essence of it. Okay, and again, that comes in lots of different ways. I came across something, 25 key cross-cultural concepts I thought I would share with you, and we can just dialogue on them as we go around. And so the first one that was listed is, in this issue of culture, remembering that you are the one who is different. You're the stranger or the foreigner. You're the weird, the weird one. And as a matter of fact, a lot of missionaries have tried as hard as possible to minimize that. Well, all try to minimize it, but some go to even greater extents. One of the most well-known was Hudson Taylor, who adopted Chinese dress and appearance, much to the chagrin of many people. When we went to Poland, we didn't really have to adopt Polish dress. It wasn't significantly different, but there were Polish, haircuts, Polish beards. You can kind of tell some of that stuff when you go look at the nativity scene. And the nativity scene tells you kind of what the culture is, because Joseph has this Lech Wałęsa mustache on, and and it's just kind of funny. But I never did that. Wasn't trying to make myself something I wasn't. But I had a teammate, him also, Chris Olszewski. He was here once for our missions conference, and he did. He kind of took more of the Hudson Taylor mentality, and just kind of, and he equated it to even he used the analogy. In America, when there's, I forget how he put it, but it was really good. He said, we appreciate the foreigner that wears the Royals baseball cap, and T-shirt. It's like, oh, hey, cool. Not to worship sports, Terry, but you get the idea. And it kind of made some sense with that, but it's but the idea that we come with the difference. One of the other things that this particular list said is that you're the visitor, you're the uninvited visitor, and here there's a balance between two things. You're the uninvited visitor, so be a good guest, okay? Be a good guest, and don't be kind of whatever. The balance to that is, as a missionary, you're also an apostolic visitor, and so you're not just going to accept everything, but you've got to be careful that you don't become super critical. Cultural practices and customs are not sacred and may be biblical, non-biblical, or unbiblical. Okay? They could be good. And even in an unbelieving culture, you can have some biblical practices. It's really interesting, though, because even that, it's just kind of strange. If I said there is a biblical practice in Asian cultures that is absent from American cultures, you could probably guess what it is. What would you guess it is?
Humility.
Well, humility, yeah, that. But I wasn't the one. I was. Respect for elders was the one that is pretty universally known, and that is something that that they do and they do well, we can find stuff in other cultures that are even lacking in our own. Often what you will find with that, though, when it is in an unbelieving context, is that, and this is true in the Asian countries, it doesn't work out as well, because usually what respect for elders usually ends up being is, I can't wait till I'm the oldest one, and then you have to do what I tell you to do. And there's always this, you see two Koreans or three Koreans get together, and there's always this incognito roundabout way of trying to determine, okay, who's the oldest? Because if I am, then I'm in charge. And so it can, even then it has this sinful part to it. But
I didn't take this note all the way through. Can you repeat number 3? Cultural practices
are not sacred and may be biblical, non-biblical, meaning abiblical, or unbiblical. So,
Can I ask something else
yeah.
here? So maybe this is getting too particular, but what about Hudson Taylor then? Because that was very controversial that he grew his hair out.
Yeah.
And that was very cultural. And
Yeah.
I think a lot from this side of the world said the Bible teaches against men having long hair.
Yeah.
I thought it was a way to reach them. So
the Bible teaches.
It's a shame for man, doesn't the Bible say?
Yeah.
He doesn't nature even.
That a woman's covering is her hair is her covering.
Well, but then there's the other one.
Yeah.
Doesn't nature itself, I think. Oh no, maybe I'm mixing them.
Yeah.
But the one where it's even a shame for man to have long hair.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where. Yeah, there and
Okay.
and I go back and sometimes these statements are hard to figure out exactly where. One of the things we know for sure is when Absalom had his hair cut, it was long. All right, he got it cut once a year. All right, and he measured out pounds of it. So long. And did you find the verse?
Yeah,
Where is it?
It's 1 Corinthians 11:14.
Is it in the context of coverings, head coverings? Yeah.
Doth not even nature itself teach you that if a man hath long hair, it is a shame unto him.
Yeah. And so and one of the
Baptists in the 70s. Back then, I had long hair.
well, long in there again. You got, and the whole Corinthians thing is how much is that? How much of head coverings is cultural? How much is hair? Does it fit? Some places they take that literally. In the Russian church, they all still wear head coverings, and long is a relative. Is a relative term, and so what does long mean? But in Hudson, where Hudson Taylor was, to a good degree, those type of things, unless there's a clear biblical passage, you gotta wrestle with them, we're probably going to get some of them wrong. We probably are. So I don't know anybody that that has perfectly divided, some of the issues. It says, man shouldn't dress like a woman. Okay, well, where is the dividing line? And especially in culture between those two things. There is a point when women are trying to look like men, and men are trying to look like women, and that's over the line. But where is it in? Scottish guys wear skirts. I know. And
but you would never. It's almost like a heart issue, isn't it? Like if you ask someone if they're Scottish, if you see someone in a skirt, if you see a man in a skirt, you start asking why questions. Well, because I'm Scottish. Oh, makes sense.
Yeah, Mike Black has a kilt that he wears at their family reunion. Well, Mike doesn't wear it to church. One guy wears one to church, and he's not Scottish at all. And I'll be honest with you, I don't get it. But Mike had his ethnic. He wears, I don't know, what's it called, a kilt? Is that what the Scots wear?
It's a kilt.
So, but these are some of the hard. The hard questions, issues of, and one of the harder ones, I think, is modesty. Is modesty cultural? To some degree it is, but to a great degree it isn't. Most of what, and modesty is more issue for women than it is for men, most of the things that even modest women wear today would have been considered immodest in the Victorian age, and so it's somehow that's a culturally driven moving target, and sometimes it's even we can tell that it's a culturally driven moving target. Because certain things would be considered modest in one environment, and they'd be immodest in another. In the sense of, you could have a modestly attired bathing suit. They're very hard to find anymore, but you could find one. But to wear that to church would be considered immodest, where to wear that in a public bathing area would be considered very, very chaste, and so those are hard ones. Those are hard ones to pick, and cultures drive some of those things, and they can be difficult to deal with in our own culture, let alone in another culture, and so this, a lot of this is a sticky wicket. One of the here's another point. After salvation, some cultural customs and practices will need to change. That is a given. From any culture that we have, even that there are things in cultures that are unbiblical, and they must change. And so we are not, as missionaries, out to preserve cultures. We're not out to make cultures American, okay, or mine. But we are not out to preserve cultures. I'm not going to wear an Oriental robe, at least as they used to wear, and some people still do. In Egypt, they wear kind of a robe. It'd be more like what ladies wear than what men wear around here. It looks more like a dress. It does. It looks like a dress. But that's not a culturally, that they don't have to give that up. that one, I think that fits. Some other person, when we go and we try to create Western attired people, Western attired churches, one of the stereotypical examples, at least when we were on the mission field, was, in the middle of Africa, the little white frame building with a steeple and a cross on top, which was clearly an American imported architecture, and not at all an African one. And is it an unbiblical importation? No, it's not unbiblical, but is it an extra biblical? Is that a part of fundamental Christianity, or is it a part of a culture that we think we have to bring with us? So these are hard things. Principles of the Bible. When you kind of draw two contrasts, and you're trying to think through some of these things, you have principles, biblical principles, in this area that we're talking about: dress, mannerisms, all this type of stuff. Even principles, I don't know if I spelled that right, or cultural patterns, okay, that exist in a country, and you can juxtapose these things. Biblical principles are always true. Cultural ones are probably rooted in some aspect of tradition. Okay, biblical ones are always timeless. Cultural ones are kind of bound. Okay, the biblical ones, transcultural. These things fit in any culture. Okay? And obviously these are not transcultural. They are culture bounded. These never change. These are always changing. And so, trying to just kind of keep in mind the difference that those things entail are necessary for us, and to think through. Okay, are we? Because the problem is this: if we bring the gospel in our culture to anybody, if we bring it in a culture that we have adopted, and the problem is that we can make the culture inherent in the gospel, and then it becomes what? It becomes a degree of a stumbling block, and we don't want to put stumbling blocks in front of people. Now, if the cultural piece we're bringing is a biblically driven cultural piece, then that's not a stumbling block. If the culture is like in Europe, topless bathing, and we say no. If you're gonna when you become a Christian, you must wear clothes all the time. Okay, then that's not a stumbling block. That's just a part of the gospel. But in the 60s, I don't know. I mean, there's peripheral issues here, as you can probably guess. In the 60s, to say, well, if you're going to accept Christ, you got to cut your hair. For some people, if their hair was a source of rebellion, then it fits. For somebody who lived in a culture where hair didn't have that attitude of rebellion, then
I was trying to remember when we were in Mexico, and you could always tell the European women, because they would walk on the beach topless.
Mm-hmm.
and I guess I thought it was just, their appreciation of their bodies. And I look, so that's a sin.
Yeah.
I realize that now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I could tell you a funny story about that. Maybe it's not funny, but we went to Italy on a vacation one time with a Polish couple, unbelieving couple, family, and it was a camping vacation, and we wanted to be on the beaches, and this was what's the city that's on the island that's sinking? The Italian city that.
The one.
Come on, the one that the water's all through it.
Yeah, or something.
Venice. So we went to Venice, and so we're on the eastern side, and we go to we were camping, so we get the kids all ready to go. We've been looking forward to the beach. We head to the beach early in the morning. Kids are having fun, and around about 11 o'clock, I look at Jenny and say, did I see what I think I just saw? She said, yeah. We were both kind of shocked. And a little while later, somebody else, it's like, okay, I know. And it's like, okay, so let's gather the kids up. And we came to go to the beach. That's what we were vacation. We drove. Man, it was a huge drive to go to the beach. And so we had to explain to our Polish friends why it was that we weren't going to be on the beach, and it was like, this is something that we can't be a part of. And interesting enough, who made the biggest kind of fuss and stink about it in our couples, our friends? It was the wife. She was like, oh, come on. And she was a good friend of ours. She wasn't a mean person, but she was just like, oh, come, this is Europe. This is how we do things in Europe. And she would have never done that in Poland. In Poland, it wasn't accepted, but here in Europe, this is da 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 da. And I just told him, sorry, but as Christians, that's not what we're going to do. And so what we end up finding out is that if you go to the beach early in the morning, you're all right. It's about noon that things start going bad. So we take the kids for a few hours in the morning and then do something else in the afternoon. But about after 3 or 4 days, man, they got into a big fight. I mean, a big fight. And she was stark raving mad at him. And we're in Italy, but she's talking in Polish, loud, and we're camping, and she is in a kind of a fit, getting ready to head down to the beach because she wasn't going, topless. She wasn't, and she was so mad at her husband, and she said in Polish, if he wants to look, he can look on his own. And she was heading down to the beach to go topless because she was so mad at him because he was kind of like Michael was saying. He was, and it was interesting that she recognized, she knew it was not a good situation, and
Adam and Eve were naked, and then the Bible
Michael,
says,
where are you going?
Not.
Michael, where are you?
Judge.
Where are you going? No.
I'm probably rationalizing.
You have, yeah. Soon as sin entered the world, what did Adam and Eve do? God, yeah. Nakedness is in that context is clearly sinful and wrong. So yeah, good story, an encouraging one about Europeans. We in this whole context, which again is culture, not Denmark, Holland. We went to stay with believers in Holland, really solid believers, and in this particular, they had so lamented because 20 years ago, and this was an older couple, 20 years ago, they said that, 20 years from when we were there, that the guy said 20 years ago, 95% of the beaches in the Netherlands were normal, and 5% were topless. And now, at the time we were there, he said it's just the opposite. It's 95% are topless and only 5%. So I asked him, I said, so what do the believers do? And he said, they don't go to the beach.
Go to the beach.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, what? It's just standing, for the truth and saying, you know what? I don't need the beach,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't, and so that it was just good to hear. And then, hearing that from him, and then hearing the American missionary in Germany saying, oh, that's just the way things are. It was like, you know what, you need to go home and you need to go over to Germany and help these people. So, like, get it. You and I, yeah. But you and I are going to have to talk about this offline, Michael, all right? In the issue of culturization, another term comes up as we try to understand cultures. It's not all kind of the stuff we've been talking about. And the term is contextualization. Have you heard the term contextualization? And if so, what do you understand by it in the context of the gospel? Anybody know? You haven't turned. I have a book over there that the title of it. Yeah, of course I do. You see an author by the name of Hesselgrave. Look under the H's. They're all. They're given by H. There should be one under H with Hesselgrave. There it is. Steve is to your left. Shoulder width. Shoulder to the left. One more, two more. Right there. That one. Yep. And the name of that whole book is on contextualization. I don't. Yeah, and the idea is with the gospel, if we're in different culture, how do we contextualize the gospel so people will understand it? There's a good and a bad sense about this. In a sense, the good sense could be when you talk about Jesus, talk about sin. They may not even have a word for sin, all right? And some cultures don't. They don't even have a word for sin. So how do you communicate the concept of an offense against a holy God if they don't even have a word for it? Maybe a more simpler example. You can't. How do you call Jesus the Lamb of God if they have no idea what a lamb is? Okay. And so these are some simplistic examples. And so how do you communicate the gospel in a way that their culture, and one of the, there's a great example, probably a movie, maybe some of you saw it, The Peace Child. Any of you ever see this movie, The Peace Child, about a New Tribes missionary in Indonesia who was dealing with warring tribes and couldn't find a way to get them to grasp the gospel, and in the middle of the war was appeased by one of the chiefs, if I recall all the issues. The war was brought to an end because one of the chiefs offered up his child as the peace child, as a sacrifice, to stop the war, and so he saw that as a means to kind of bring in the gospel message. So contextualization is trying to teach these concepts that the culture may not have, and so there is a degree that it needs to be there. Maybe a good bad example of contextualization. When we were in Poland, there was some other younger people there that were doing some magic ministry and stuff, and they were very gifted in what they did. It just wasn't very, very good. And one of their skits to kind of contextualize the gospel was somebody who got in trouble and then eventually this person came and saved them. I can't remember all the details of the skit, but it was meant to contextualize the work of Christ. The problem is, in this particular context, that the person that saved the person in trouble happened to be their mother. Right? And you may say, well, what was the problem with that? Well, when you're in a Roman Catholic context and the mother comes to the rescue, all right, you have just, re-emphasized Mariology to the nth degree, and it was just so it was a poor example of contextualization. But the difficulty with contextualization is legitimate if you do not tamper with the gospel. And it is illegitimate when you start tampering, when you make the square gospel fit into a round hole. It's illegitimate. You've got to find a square cultural hole that it fits in without twisting it. And that is a hard and often people don't spend enough time making sure that the contextualization is not actually tampering with the gospel. We do some of that even around here. We contextualize it in ways that is illegitimate, and so it's a part of culture. It's a part of missions. Something you got to think about as a missionary, but you're not free. You're not free to tamper with the gospel. We spoke a lot about that on that night or that day. Mm-hmm.
Actually, if you want to talk to someone who's a really good authority on contextualization, it's one of our own missionaries. It's Michael Martin. He deals with this issue constantly when he's doing Bible translation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how do I take this Indonesian concept and turn it to this biblical language and turn it to the Indonesian language so they can understand it. And he's wrestling with that issue constantly.
Yeah, and sometimes Wycliffe does well, and sometimes they go too far.
Well, actually, I think this is more than I should. So Wycliffe used to be better at it.
Yes, that's kind of what I was thinking.
And now they're actually kind of not good at it. They think their job is to preserve the language.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
Did you have anything off the top of your head for how we contextualize the gospel in America?
In general, I don't know that we do in the environments in which we're talking, partly because we have so long of a history with biblical terminology and biblical concepts. We're kind of you'd be surprised how many even of our idioms are biblically based. So we know what lambs are, even if we've never been a shepherd. I think it gets, so generally speaking, I think it's pretty good. I think it gets a little worse when we get into we try to get into some of the more unique cultural environments in America. In some sense, that guy you and I was talking about. He's trying to contextualize, package the gospel in a form of what would it be? Punk rock or whatever it is. I don't know what it's called. And package the message in a package he thinks is neutral, but it carries some baggage with. So when we get in some of the fringe groups and we try to make the gospel too at home for them, I think those are some bad examples of contextualization. I don't know if that makes any sense. Not really. In other words, I don't have a good example.
Yeah, a little bit.
Does anybody think of a...
Making it maybe too comfortable for the listener, trying to conform it too much to the culture versus sticking more to Christ alone and to sin and to...
Can you give me an example? Because I guess I'm struggling with...
Well, I'm struggling with a decent example too, Michael. Anybody help on this?
I mean, I don't know that this is an example, but in dealing with Catholics,
Uh-huh.
I've started using the example of if I said I was going to start buying you your groceries every week, and you're using your credit card, and I'm just gonna buy whatever I wanna buy and drop it at your door, would you accept that? And the point attempting to make is then why would you trust, your eternity is far, far more of an issue than just what you eat. Why would you trust Rome and the church just to tell you this is truth? And so I don't know.
Yeah.
If that's,
Might be more of a, it's a degree to make it palatable, or not palatable, but clear, a metaphor. I'm trying to think,
metaphor not, okay.
yeah, I'm trying to think of methods of contextualization. Again, contextualization, the reason I don't think it's necessarily a thing we see a lot here is because contextualization implies a non-understanding of what the message is, that my culture is so far removed from the biblical, from the gospel as it's put forth in the scripture, that I got to somehow bring these two things. I've got to put the gospel in the context of this culture.
Yeah, because my stepdaughter and her kids go to a church, and they call it like a Baptist church, but they spend a lot of times with music and clapping of hands and saying all this other stuff, and then they eventually get to the preaching, but it's very expressive.
Yeah, I bet you could. I think one of the things that we're all kind of thinking about and wondering about and using examples about some of this packaging Christianity. Maybe here it's more so Christianity than the gospel. Packaging Christianity very tightly in the culture that we like, be it the charismatic culture, the rock club culture, the entertainment culture. That is all kind of that's all the offspring of contextualization. It is all kind of under that big umbrella, and so I guess we're probably fair in calling that a contextualization, and I think we all can see when sometimes that becomes, that clouds the gospel, and it doesn't just have to be. One of the things you have to ask yourself, it doesn't just have to be something really kind of obviously bad. What about cowboy churches? Is that good or bad? It's not rock music. It's a different style of music.
I don't even know what they are.
Churches that are put together for people who are very usually cowboy horse minded issue, and they may have and I would submit that's beyond just the church affecting a culture. That's the church adopting a culture, and they've gone too far.
And I think, like in the days of Through the Bible with what's his face,
McGee, Jay Vernon,
McGee and all this stuff, this is just not palatable enough to reach young people.
Right? Yeah, that's kind of.
And they're trying to
Yeah.
jazz it up somehow.
Yeah, and again, and I think, and I never really put it all together, but I think this conversation has that would be the American rendition of contextualization that's what we're talking about. We're thinking about when we go overseas. How do we change it? How far can you go until you've gone too far? How do you make sure that you communicate truth without changing the message? So.
Could I ask something So like with the cowboy church, would that be taking it too far because they have kind of thrown out the holiness in the church, or the worship in the church, and it's just become too...
Yeah, I think the reason that type of stuff has gone too far, whether it be cowboy or anything else, is that it is the garb, no pun intended, the garb that you have dressed the church in is in and of itself restrictive to those who wear the garb. Okay, and the church is not supposed to be. The church's strength is in its diversity, not its uniformity.
So instead of the cowboy church or the punk rock church, I think America's biggest sin is the family church, right?
I would say the biggest one would be the entertainment church.
Well, the entertainment church, true.
But that's a much more typical marketing,
Right.
of family church, family life church, family bookstore, and it's kind of like, okay, so what do you do if you don't have a family? I mean,
Right. Or
so,
what do you do?
So but that one, so that is another kind of, marketing, or I don't know if marketing is the right term,
Right.
but
What do you do? You're an older couple.
yeah, you don't have, or you come from a broken family,
Right.
How do you work in a family if you don't have one? And are you not welcome because mine is broken, so.
Nobody believes in the nuclear family anymore anyway.
Yeah, I know. So it almost isn't even an issue much anymore. But I think the entertainment is probably the biggest cultural one that we have that drives it more than anything else. Let me see. One note as far as changing our culture, being able to let go of things that are important to us. The passage of Paul in 1 Corinthians, "I've become all things to all men," is a good. It's used wrongly often, but it is a good verse. Can I let go of this for the sake of the gospel if it's not inherent in the gospel? And usually that idea, well, matter of fact, when Paul uses that idea, it was not, he used it not necessarily as adopting kind of things in your life so I can make the gospel palatable for you. It wasn't necessarily a contextualization idea. Paul used it more in as a missionary sense in, can I leave my American culture? Can I leave my culture that I'm very comfortable with and like, but recognize that it's just my culture? Can I leave that for the sake of others? His comment when he used that was not I want the freedom to do whatever I want to do, which is how some people use it nowadays. I am willing to let go of some of my rights as a believing Jew for the sake of the Gentiles. If food causes you to stumble, I won't eat food. I won't eat meat again. His was a for the sake of the gospel, not a pushing of to do whatever he wants to do, and that's where people often get that wrong. So it is a very applicable missionary mandate when we say, you know what, yeah, I mean, I'm very comfortable in the culture I'm in. It's a good culture. It's not bad, but I can go over where guys wear dresses, okay, if I need to, and even wear a dress, if I need to. So. Skipping over a lot of these. language is a big part of culture, of missions, and learning language is just huge. We make a big deal. If you're gonna live in a country that speaks a different language, you used to be you had to learn it because they didn't know English. Now a lot of people know English, so that kind of takes with it. But there is an aspect of learning how people think and act by learning their language, and so language acquisition, I think, is just as important as it's always been. Especially then you can learn how to. I had a guy say a really dumb thing one time, and he was a Pole. And he spoke some English because he learned some English, and he used to say, he told me, he said, I like sharing the gospel in English because it doesn't allow people to kind of parse over nuances. It's because most people didn't have that good of a grasp. They had to deal with real simple language, and they could only communicate in real simple language, so they weren't really able to argue as much because they didn't have the ability to argue. And it was really a dumb statement because just because they couldn't articulate in the English language their argument, it was still going on in their mind. All right, so you weren't quieting their arguments. You just weren't able. You just weren't letting them to articulate it. And so in the same way, if you can learn the language, you will communicate much better. It is easier for the missionary to enter into the language and communicate the gospel clearer by entering into the language of the person than it is for the person to try to understand the gospel in a second language as they speak to you. So an important part of culture is language.
And it communicates love.
And it communicates love.
It shows that interest. When we talked about before
Yeah.
that somebody coming here wearing the Royals ball cap.
Yeah.
To me, even beyond that is when they want to learn the language.
Right.
When the same for the missionary going.
Yeah, and especially when you go and you're an English speaker and everybody wants to learn English, and you want to learn whatever this is, Tagalog. Why would you want to learn? Nobody speaks Tagalog. We wish we didn't speak Tagalog. And it's like, well, I want to learn Tagalog because that's your language. Yeah, you're right, it does.
Oh, I just love that keynote speaker when he was talking about these foreign people coming in here and attending that college, and then when they go back, they already know the culture, they know the language and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really a good idea.
Yeah, and we're
Oh, sorry.
no, nothing to be sorry about. There is, and part of this revolves around the quote we read from Cain. When things close up, you got to do things differently. And the world, I don't know if you know this or not, the world is much more closed now to missions than it's ever been. Every year, more countries are closing than opening. I think in the early 1900s, there was only three. I think I saw the stats one time. There was only 3 or 4 countries that you couldn't go into with the gospel. Now there are scores of countries. So it's getting other options. But there is something about the foreign missionary coming that represents a biblical principle that the national worker doesn't do. There is that aspect of incarnation that people have, and again, it reflects even the work of Christ. Christ's work was incarnational. He took on flesh and became like us to convey the gospel. There is something of value in going to a foreign place for the sake of the gospel that the missionary represents and brings. Sometimes we've talked a lot about culture, brings to the the culture, to the nations, something that even the nationals don't understand about their own culture. You know, they have blind spots like we do. So it's a great model. It helps a lot. I think ideally it's a both and type of situation.
Our author even hinted at it in that same paragraph where, you know, at some point, America won't be sending missionaries anywhere because there aren't believers, and China's going to be sending missionaries over here.
Right. Yeah. So
they're going to be going forth to America.
Any parting? Learning the obstacles in the culture, if there are there to the gospel, is important. When you're in a different culture, if you ever get in one and do, you have better, if you're going to be in a different culture and learn the language and culture, you have better not take yourself too seriously, because you will be a source of much jolly for everybody. And I don't know if you ever wondered why it is that we have all the ethnic jokes about the Poles and the Swedes and the two dumb Swedes, and we have all these jokes. It has nothing to do with the intellectual ability of Poles or Swedes or anyone else. It has everything to do with the ethnic communities of Poles and Swedes, both not knowing the language and the culture, just seem like simpletons and dummies. You can get over on them and you will be that in another culture. And so, as you learn these things, so you have to don't take yourself very seriously, or you will be frustrated. So, all right, let's close in a word of prayer. Father, as we talked a little bit about the manifold, what's the term? Just the great differences of all the different cultures that you've created, the scattering at Babel, and so many other things that have come to play. That we have just this kaleidoscope of beliefs and actions, and some of which are reflective of your image in man and therefore glorifying unto you, and some of which are reflective of sin and the fall and therefore are decrepit, and everything in between, Father. And we think of the divergence of peoples and nations and tribes and tongues and languages and ages and all of these things, to remember the fact that the gospel is transcultural. It is above all of that. It is not packaged in any culture. It is not confined to any culture. Even given in the context of early Judaism and some of the pictures there being conveyed, Father, but the gospel meant to go into the nations and formulated and equipped and able to do that, and to pierce any and all cultures. And so, Father, we just pray that you would help us to be gifted at knowing just what is the essence of redemption, and what is the essence of sanctification, what is the essence of righteousness, and that we can manifest those things in the cultures where we are, but Father, that we would not replace those things with the culture. And so we ask to be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves. And these things we pray in Christ's name. Amen.